Okay, welcome everybody. I'd like to call to order the July 2024 meeting of the Board of Directors of the Lane Regional Air Protection Agency. Are there any adjustments to the agenda today? Seeing none, we'll move forward. Now I'd like the opportunity to provide public participation. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment on any item on today's agenda? If there's anyone online from the public?
There are folks online from the public, but no one's raising a hand or indicating they'd like to speak.
Okay. All right. Are there any comments from the public on a topic that's not on today's agenda? Seeing none in public or on Zoom, there's no public comment today. Moving on, are there any comments from the board members this time? Mine or here? Okay. I don't think I'm going to break my 1 hour. But we're moving along. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the June 13th meeting. Heather, do you have any?
Just for your approval, review and approval.
Okay. Online or here, are there any comments or adjustments, corrections to the minutes?
Nope.
Okay, seeing no comment, I'd entertain a motion to approve the June 13, 2024 meeting minutes.
So moved.
Moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any additional comment, discussion? If not, all in favor of approval of the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? They're approved. Thank you. Approval of financial report, item 6. I'm talking with Travis, normally both on the minutes and on the financial report. We've had these under consent agenda. And since there's always a little bit of discussion about the financial report, we thought it might be best just to have that as a standalone agenda item so that not that limits discussion, but it maybe facilitate staff providing a little bit more detail and the board understanding what the financial report is for the reporting period, which is May 2024. So Christina, would you like to walk us through that, please?
Yes, thank you. And I think we'll do it this way going forward, where we break it out and have more of an intentional moment in time to talk about the financials. So one of the things that you'll notice is it looks like we are going to be over budget this year. So that's a huge hit. We will get a finding on our audit for that. But I kind of wanted to explain how much over we are and what I think it will be by the end of, we have not closed the June books yet. We're still receiving some invoices for services that were provided in June. So those have to hit the June books in accordance with accrual accounting. So it's still an estimate on the June numbers right now, but we'll look at the May numbers first, which is what you have in your report here. And the first thing I'd like to talk about is the general fund. The revenue is going to look a lot better next month because in the month of June, we received almost $300,000. So even though right now the revenue looks like it's not as robust as it should be, it will be on par with the budgeted revenue by the end of June. So that kind of affects the net revenue over expenses. Right now, it looks like we're in the hole by 552,000, but once we get that 300,000 posted, that's going to look a lot better. What we really should look at is the blue column, the year-to-date through May, the total expenditures, which is 2.8 million. We only budgeted 2.7 million, so we are over by 100,000, almost 140,000 already at the end of May. So by the end of June, I predict that's going to look more like 350 over budget. And I know that that's kind of takes the wind out of our sails. But so I wanted to tell you the three top line items that we went over in, just to give you some context for that overage. Our capital improvements are over by 138,000 for the fiscal year. And our legal fees are over by 95,000. We only budgeted 5,000 for legal fees in this fiscal year, which I believe is an error in the budgeting. Even in a normal year, I believe we would have more than that. But from what I understand, in previous years, we had kind of an in-kind arrangement for our legal advice, which ended up kind of causing a little bit of a conflict of interest for us. So we really needed a neutral party that we could hire that was not connected to any one of our partners or sources, you know, in any way. So we just didn't have an idea of how much that was going to cost us. I do believe that we won't be close to 100,000 in future years for legal fees, because we had some kind of extenuating circumstances this fiscal year that drove those legal fees up. Both personnel issues and then also just the advice we needed to get on the RFP process for our bids for our construction. We wanted to make sure we were on the up and up with the way we were doing all of those legal requirements. So in normal years, we wouldn't have either of those situations.
I'll just chime in real quick on the legal engagement with the bid. Has been a lot of engaging with Blake in helping myself and Lance, who's been a part of this as well, understand this process, which is new for both of us, and making sure that we are well in the loop and checking all the boxes that we need to be checking for a due diligence perspective. So I do think that engagement with Fort Purdy, as well as them reviewing our contract for the actual project itself and putting in their templated forms versus the ones that were crafted by the architects, leaves us in a much better position for the project, but came with a cost for that time and effort. So.
Mm-hmm. And then the third area we went significantly over in is contract services. We went over by 128,000 in contract services. I think part of that is in the beginning of the year, some of our items were coded to contract services that could have been coded better elsewhere. So I think in future years, it won't be that high either. But we also had some unexpected contract services, such as Eric and Summer, who are helping us with our Cassell conversion. We had just a ton of issues with importing in our data from the old financial software into the new financial software, and it caused some data entry discrepancies and things like that. And to be honest, we're still working on cleaning those up, identifying them and cleaning them up. So that has been some contract services that we've had to invest in that we did not anticipate when we wrote the budget. So those are kind of the three major categories. I know. So we're over on our general fund expenditures, but we're under in the other fund expenditures. So I don't know, to be honest, from an audit finding standpoint, if they look at it as all of your funds in a consolidated fashion, like the LB1 is all of the funds consolidated. It's not divided out between the funds. If we do that, we may squeak in under and not have a finding. If the finding is per fund, then we will have a finding because of the general fund going over. So it'll be close either way, depending on how the rest of these invoices that come in for our June services goes. But I just wanted to give you guys that heads up. I know we don't have a meeting in August, and I didn't want to wait till September to kind of give you that bad news of the budget overage. The other thing that I don't know about that I wanted to loop you all in on is So at the end of this fiscal year, there will be a new ending balance for Aerometrics, the fund. And I believe it'll be around 1.1 million. I don't know if we should move that fund balance over at the end of this fiscal year, or if we should budget for it and move it over in next fiscal year. So I have to ask our auditors about that, what the best way to handle that is. It's really just moving money on paper. It's saying instead of tagging it Aerometrics, now we want to tag it to the general fund, which we're gonna end up just spending it right on out because of this construction, but that's okay. So I don't know if we should move it at the end of this year. That means we would be over by that huge amount, right? Because we didn't budget for the expense of moving that from one fund to the other. So I'm gonna recommend that we do it at the beginning of the 25 fiscal year, because we have time to do a supplemental budget to add that in. Whereas we run out of time on last fiscal year. The only reason we wouldn't do it that way is if the auditor says we really should have done it last fiscal year. So I will take the auditor's advice and see what he says about that, but we did not account for moving that fund money over in 2024 at all. So that's why I'm gonna recommend that we do it in 2025. Even though we've ceased all activities, that fund is still sitting there, if that makes sense. So does anybody have any questions about any of that I just dropped on you?
Ryan?
Yeah, thanks, Christina. Just a question. The contracted services, I'm thinking that perhaps some of the search for the new executive director and the transition occurred, we incurred some costs there.
Yes.
How do we bin our legal? Is that also under contracted services?
No, legal has its own line item.
Okay.
But if it didn't have its own line item, yes, it would go under contracted services. So what we try to do is, as we look at each invoice, if there is a line item that is appropriate for that invoice, we use that line item first, and our last kind of holding space is contracted services. But we really try to identify a better line item to put each invoice under. Just some don't fit in any of our line items, so they go to contracted service.
Understand. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And thanks for pointing out the recruiting. I was not thinking of that just now. So that was another expense that was in the contracted services. And along those lines, the couple of employees that we brought on as sort of temp to hire through a temporary agency, when they are under the temporary agency, that expense goes into contracted services because we're paying the temp agency for that. So that was another expense that drove the contracted services up. And we don't anticipate having any of those temp to hire situations in the coming year. So we'll have eliminated that need as well. Yes.
Could you provide a little color on the first bullet point, the capital improvements like you did for the other two? Was that was related to which project or projects?
Okay, so let me get there. On mine, I have some backup documentation here that I can provide. So on just the building improvements, we spent 133,000 on that. We spent 142,000, almost 143,000 on landscape and parking lot improvements. That was way over what we budgeted for. We did not, I guess, realize the parking lot and the landscaping was going to cost as much as it did. And then there was also a small 68 or 66,000 on an equipment capital outlay. And that was actually mostly a piece of equipment that we purchased with pass-through dollars from DEQ. So, but because it was a piece of equipment that was more than $5,000 that goes under capital. So we got reimbursed for that portion from DEQ, but
The expenditure.
it still shows up on the expenditure, yeah.
Thank you. That's helpful. And then a second question is seeing these overages and then looking at the budget for the next fiscal year that we just approved. Are there any areas of concern? Like, for example, I hope that we have budgeted more than 5,000 for legal next year and similar with contract services. Is there any concern that we may have
I do have some concern that we might have under budgeted in a few categories. What my plan is to let the first 3 to 6 months pass, and then I already know we're gonna have to do a supplemental budget to take care of moving that Aerometrics fund money over. So I know we're gonna have to do a whole supplemental budget. It's not gonna be within 10%. It's gonna be the full-fledged thing where we have to do the public notice and all of that. So I wanna roll it all together and do a better predictor of how much have we spent so far and how many more months are left. What unfortunately we didn't do before I started, when Susanna did the last supplemental budget, she was just looking at it from a couple of directions, and she was really trying to keep it within that 10% wiggle room so that we didn't have to do the public notice. But if I had been here, I really would have encouraged us to go through the whole large process and just, if we accidentally over budgeted, it would have been fine to not spend all of it. But I think we knew, I feel like Susanna knew we were gonna go a little bit over budget, but not as much as we actually did. So, yeah, I know we're gonna have to do the whole process this time, so there's not gonna be any, let's try to keep it under the 10%. It'll be more reality. But we've been spending this much each month, and we need to plan for this much each month going forward. And I wasn't really able to do that heading into this new budget, because I hadn't even wrapped my brain around our budget at all when I first started. So I'm getting there. I also did not know we could do as many supplemental budgets as we needed to. I thought once you did supplemental budget, that was your last chance to adjust the budget. But Mike Fleck has educated me a little bit more about that, and that you can do, if you needed to, not that you want to, I'm not saying we want to do this, but you can do as many supplemental budgets as you need to get your budget on track. And we should have done one in June, but now it's too late because the clock has passed. So, yeah, the finding is definitely weighing on my shoulders, as I should have investigated doing another supplemental budget increase, and I just didn't. So I was braced for knowing we were probably gonna go over. I still don't understand fully the ramifications of having that finding. We have had that finding as an agency in the past. So it's not the first time that we've had that finding. But I don't know what the ramifications of having that finding is. I mean, a finding in and of itself is just a slap on the wrist. You did something wrong, fix it next time. But I don't know if there's any, like, do we have to alert, who do we have to alert that we had the finding? I have to research what we need to do as a result of that finding, and I don't know those answers right now. Unfortunately.
But there were some extraordinary costs that wouldn't have been anticipated. So.
Right, yeah.
Christina, just from the city perspective, I know, the audit gets filed with the Secretary of State.
Right.
And what happens is you have to, at least for a city, if they've had findings or they had a going concern, you'd have to put together a letter of how you're going to fix that.
Right.
And send it to Secretary of State. I've never seen anything, the most severe is obviously a going concern, and that's not the case here. And
right.
I don't know what the percentage over your budget is, but there's also a percentage you play with that you really aren't even required to have a supplemental, but I don't know.
Okay, well, I can tell you that currently on the, as of May, we're 5% over budget. But by the time June will get here, I believe we'll be between 8 and 9% over budget. So hopefully that's a small enough number to keep everyone from getting too excited about it, so.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
You're welcome, thank you. Any other comments or questions?
I comment, I appreciate this new format, and I appreciate these issues being surfaced and kind of described as in plain English and clearly as they are. I mean, obviously not the news that we want, but most importantly, this is being surfaced and transparent. And I appreciate that, and I appreciate the new format.
Thank you.
Susanna spent some effort when she first kind of got into the interim chair to try to increase the transparency and the communication with the board. Because my goal, and I think her goal too, was the board to feel very comfortable and in the know of what was taking place.
Absolutely.
And I felt that the consent calendar was a way to maybe move through discussions that were more healthy to actually have each meeting. So this type of discussion on this information that we'll present to you, moving forward would be a 5 to 10 minute step that we take to go through it and then be open to questions and direction.
It's related, but not completely related to today's report. But I would be, we're got some financial issues, and plus also besides, I wouldn't be surprised if the auditor said, take care of the mess this year and not wait.
Right, I'm just gonna wait and see what they say.
I wouldn't be surprised. But I would like to know, and it's just me, and there may be other board members that are also curious as to this. LRAPA has gone through this storm in the last couple of years, and it's been unpleasant on many levels. But it's also costing our ratepayers, so to speak, our permittees and our partners money for errors, unintentional and or whatever. I would like to know what the total cost that we have incurred in regards to all the consulting, the extra consulting we've had to do, the terminations we've done, the payoffs we've done, the extra staff we've taken on and not really approved FTEs. And so you see what I'm saying? There's been a heck of a snowball effect. And I think we're seeing this in these numbers. And if someone was to come to me and says, well, LRAPA looks like it's a mess, and how much is that costing us? How much has that impacted the ratepayers? And especially if we go, hey, we're going to bump dues up, you're going to find at least one ratepayer is going to say, no, that's poor administration, that's poor financial judiciary responsibility, and we're not going to support that. And that's what I would prepare for.
Yeah, I very much understand that perspective, and I agree with it that if the government should be efficient and well functioning, and if it's not efficient and it's not well functioning, the cost of those inefficiencies are not the responsibility of those supporting the government. That is a responsibility of the government to clean up and find those efficiencies.
Which is a perfect example of what DEQ pulled in this last Senate bill that's bumped all of our permittees rates up by 83%. That is from administrative malfeasance in my mind. And I don't want to be pictured in that same boat with what they did for poorly represented agency for 10 years straight.
Well, of course, it's very hard to put a dollar amount on how much does it cost you when you have a bad hire.
Oh, yeah.
So because it's not just the direct costs, right? There's a lot of indirect costs as well. But
Yeah, it balloons.
Yeah, it does. And when it's a bad hire that was in the top seat at the agency, it really affects the entire agency and the productivity of everyone within the agency. So it's hard to come up with an exact number of.
Oh, no, and I agree. It's a moving target. I totally agree. And I'm not necessarily asking for a 0.00.
Right.
Just a ballpark by saying this is how much it can cost, which it cost us for folks not really keeping a finger on things better than what had happened. Because I think a lot of that could have been avoidable.
So a sense that could be determined of there has been transition over the last few years and to the cost of the organization and therefore the cost of those who support the organization.
Right.
What is that sense of about what that expense has been to give a loose thumb on what that
Sure.
So we'll pull that together and have something for you guys at the next board meeting in September.
I think it'd be very informational. I don't know if anybody else feels that would be good information to have, and I don't want to be the one jumping up on the table and whatnot. But just from my perspective, I think, from an elected position and representing a city, I would probably want,
Right.
I would think, Matt, well, you would probably want it too. That would be good info for you too, Matt, wouldn't it?
You're on mute, Matt.
Thanks. Trying to unmute Joe.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Said the other way around.
Yeah, but like there's a cost that's difficult to quantify about the inaction of the agency.
Right.
And so, that like, I hear what you're saying. I don't know. I don't know how we would report out the inverse. If LRAPA didn't take action, this would be a snowball effect that would be costing us $500,000.
Right.
And so I don't even want to begin to guesstimate how much either political capital or personnel costs went into this last year's kind of bump in the road. I hear what you're saying. When staff does that work, from my vantage point, I think it's difficult to quantify that. But if we do, I would ask that maybe we do our best to, even if it's ballpark, quantify, some of the versus the inaction. So let's say back of the napkin,
Right.
it was $100,000 bump in the road based on our consultant fees, et cetera. This board took action and stood united, and I appreciate that. From all ends of the political spectrum, and that's a healthy thing for the board to have done, and you can't quantify that in
The
dollar.
value.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying, Matt, and I agree, and that's why I hesitated even kind of bringing that up, but I have, it just this question in my mind is what was the if it's possible, and I'm not asking for a big, everybody all hands on deck project type thing at all,
Right.
at all. I'm just saying if it's something that can be extrapolated to give us kind of a ballpark, like you're saying, number as to what kind of financial impact LRAPA itself as a whole suffered over this period in which we were trying to make adjustments and pay for mistakes and not pay for whatever, there's some out of pockets that I've heard of that I don't have a total to, that's all. Just out of pocket, more than just theory.
Things that we will not see going forward.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Well, there's definitely costs that we can easily quantify.
Right.
Mhm.
And then we can maybe also put all the hours of board time on this too. That's kind of one of those unquantifiable things, but it was not.
That cost us zero.
It was not
volunteers.
It was
Value is higher.
maybe it was for you, but I think there was others that would say it wasn't such a trivial thing, but anyway, well, it's a good discussion, and so I think,
Yeah,
with a sense of we'd like to maybe see what Joe suggested, which is a good idea.
So just to make sure I'm understanding and having good clarity here, for the September board meeting, not a specific .00 on the dollar line, but from this point in time, and that's where I'm like, how far back is the board interested in the starting point of this review? Is the starting point the spring, April 2021? To today, or is there another point in time when the board says, here's when some of the transitional challenges began? And so what's the scope of how far back does this cost and this assessment want to provide?
Maybe let's talk about that offline. Okay.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
But I have it as an action item, something to get together for next
Okay.
board.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any other discussion on the financial report for June?
For May.
Or for May, I'm sorry. If not, entertain a motion to approve the May financial report. So moved. Second. It's been seconded. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you. And I anticipate that'll be a shorter discussion each month. We just had a lot of catching up to do today.
Mr. Chair, I'm an aye. I didn't unmute in time again.
Okay, thank you.
We felt it, Matt, we felt it.
Yeah. All right, moving on. Jim, would you like to report on the advisory committee, please?
So a little bit of business to start off. We have member Paul Mitzler, who represents public. His first term is coming to an end. And the committee voted unanimously to refer his reappointment. So the application is in the packet, and you may also remember him as serving on the budget committee recently. So I leave that to you to approve him for another term. And then under our bylaws, if a member misses 3 or has 3 unexcused absences. They're to be removed from the committee. And we have Ms. DeFrost represented general public and actually missed quite a few and has been unresponsive to attempts to communicate. So I reluctantly need to have her removed from the committee.
That's by board action, correct or not?
I think it's automatic. but-
Yeah, so I think the bylaws kind of say that if you pass this line, then that's the outcome.
Makes sense.
And then otherwise, we discussed the goals document, and we'll be providing input for that and discuss it in our July meeting with the view to having our input complete for the September presentation. Okay, and that's it.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of Jim?
I'll elaborate a little bit more on what that process will be or has been with the CAC. So in the same way that I've presented the goals to the board to say, here's what exists from January 2022, provided that to the CAC, we've had some discussion and we have received feedback from individual CAC members. We're going to take that feedback and kind of try to summarize it, so to speak, into a single consensus, and then bring that to the CAC for discussion, for their review, improvement, and then their approval of it. And then that will be what's provided to the board come September.
Any questions? Okay, well, as an action item, the advisory committee is recommended the reappointment of Tom Metzler to another term on the PAC. Is there a motion?
So moved.
To appoint? It's been moved by Joe to reappoint Paul Metzler. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, if not, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, well, thank you, and thanks to Paul for volunteering again. Appreciate that. And thank you for your report. And as far as will you or how do we communicate? What's the appropriate way of communicating to Ms. Frost that she's no longer on the CAC due to missing meetings? I realize that she hasn't been responsive, but
She hasn't been responsive, so I guess we just inform her with the means we have.
Okay.
We have her contact information.
okay, I think we should do it formally, in a letter or something,
Just email her.
or email her.
I would do both an email and a regular letter, just
Yeah.
because if she's not getting online for some health reasons or something.
Yeah. Okay, right, well, staff will take care of that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, next, Travis, you want to discuss item 8, board member input on LRAPA goals?
Yes, thanks, Howard. So as here described in the staff report, I think it's really important that the board, as the policy setting body of LRAPA, that I have a good understanding of all of the perspectives of the members on the board. So my project and task that I set out is to have one-on-one gatherings with every member of the board. So far, I've met with 6 out of the 9, and by the time we get to September, I'll have completed those one-on-ones. I am approaching those conversations very much just open and spending a lot of time listening to what the perspective is, reflecting on what is LRAPA's role in Lane County according to each board member, and what are some things from your own perspective that we should be focusing on and working on. And of the conversations I've had so far, I've really appreciated the insight, and I think there has been a lot of commonality to those. I don't want to dive into too much of that feedback just yet until I've had an opportunity to hear from everybody. But the outcome I'm hoping is that I will have a good set of new goals to present to the board in September. And then at that point, reflect on too, if the goals is a way to get at a more of a strategic plan, is the goals that need, or is there also then a separate need for a different perspective for the board to provide and approve on that strategic plan? So that's just an update for the board, an opportunity to discuss and then provide any course correcting that may seem to be needed in my engagement to get a better sense of the board's intent and direction as I implement the policy set by the board.
Any questions, discussion?
Quick question, Travis, in the probationary period goals, one of them was at number 6, the organizational culture and communication. There's gonna be an employee engagement survey that was done. Is that done? Is that in progress? And are there any plans? I guess I don't know what form that takes, but are there any plans to share findings from that with the board?
Yes, so I have not taken formal action on that yet in terms of soliciting feedback from the staff. In terms of engaging and improving morale, there's been quite a bit of significant effort that has been ongoing. My approach is, as we get closer to that end of that 6 months, my intent is to then craft what I hope to be a real comprehensive 360-degree sort of review of the morale and the culture and changes from their perspective over the number of months, and then the outcome and insights from that solicitation of feedback to be brought to the board for reflection on whether or not I'm successful in meeting that goal or not.
Got it. So the survey in the first month has been more informal, but there hasn't been like a rate this 1 to 10 that went out to everyone and there's a bunch of compiled results. Okay.
No, nothing like that
Okay.
yet to take place.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Anything else? Well, Travis, thank you for taking initiative to meet with board members. I think that's a valuable exercise. And let's get a good perspective on all of us as well, coming from different perspectives for sure. So we appreciate that.
I see it as the board is really important to the organization, and the best way to understand the board is through good relationships. So
Very good. Okay, thank you. Moving on. The next item is the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant Program. Travis, I'd like to discuss that, please.
yeah, so this is something that I was really hopeful would have been a different share out today than what it is. There was a grant opportunity under the Oregon Department of Oregon Department of Energy, excuse me. They had about $1.2 million available in subawards for energy efficiency projects, and an engagement with EWEB, Lane County, and University of Oregon and City of Eugene. There was an idea to submit a $100,000 grant application to this grant opportunity that would fund some oil furnace fuel changeovers to ductless heat pumps. The City of Eugene believes there's about 400 to 500 residential properties within city limits of Eugene that is still on oil fuel. And this would be an opportunity to find some low-income residents and fund a changeover to ductless heat pump. Unfortunately, as getting to the due diligence aspect of understanding this grant opportunity and preparing for a grant submittal, the long short of it is LRAPA does not qualify on our definition of local government, which kind of flips the table over, and is why I had hoped that this agenda item would have been on a successful application submitted to the Oregon Department of Energy, and instead is a swing and a miss application to the Oregon Department of Energy. But I think that it reflects, or my take home from it is appreciation to the collaborativeness and the relationships that were developed and maintained through this grant development process. I think that the idea is still there, it still exists, it's just plugging it into the right funding source, and a good learning moment for myself on order of operations before digging into potential grant ideas. So that's the share out here for this agenda item.
So the other partners that you talked to, Eugene, EWEB, this county, were any of them qualified to propose on that, or to apply for the application, and you think they'll proceed, or are they proceeding?
They wouldn't have been qualified because under this grant block, there was some formula grants, which essentially said the Federal Department of Energy set money aside that if you submit an application and you meet this specific qualification, you are just provided this funding. which Lane County, City of Eugene qualified for that formulaic grant. But because of that, they do then not have the opportunity to apply for the competitive component of the grant, which would be the subaward from the state of 1.2 million that they had available. And that's where the initial thought being that, well, LRAPA did not qualify for the formulaic grant, but we, as a local government organization, can still potentially apply for this competitive grant opportunity. That sounds like a real great opportunity. Let's take the next steps. There was interest and engagement from partners on this idea. But then upon reflecting of who actually meets the categorical qualifications, we were not within that category.
When Travis mentioned this to me in a phone discussion several weeks ago, I was pretty surprised that there were an estimated 400 to 500 residences using fuel oil. You know, you just I personally don't vision that being used in the northwest so much. You know, it seems like a more New England Midwest thing, traditionally using fuel oil for heating. So it was pretty surprising, and certainly from an air quality standpoint, you know, getting people off of burning fuel oil would be a good thing. But maybe in the future there'll be some other opportunities. But anyway, I think it's great that LRAPA staff are looking for opportunities for grants and things like that. So, and also just the relationship building with our agency partners. So I think that's all good. So, any questions, anybody? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to next item, the rule mandated annual fee increase. Travis.
Yeah, I will start this, but then we'll also be looking to Max for a lot more of the deeper discussion, and as he's a much deeper subject matter expert than me on this. But this started, or the reason why this is an agenda item for today is LRAPA has annual 4% fee increases for our ACDP fees as well as our asbestos fees, which just sort of increase every year by rule. And the board was interested in discussing this and having a better understanding of where these fee increases come from and the motivation behind them. And so what is presented here in the staff report is a breakdown of our fees, where they have come from, what they're for, what they fund across the organization, and our approach to having our increasing fees with the rising cost of living and all of those other market adjustments in a way that is more stable and fair for our business community. So here is a docket of information that I hope that the board had opportunity to read through. And then at this point, it's here as a discussion point for the board.
Okay.
So I raised a question. I don't know if this was prompted this when I spoke to you about or asked about the fee increases, and I had some angst in regards to any fee increase that costs users, or however when you put it, taxpayers, committees, money that's automatic. And I think that they deserve, the people that actually pay those increases deserve some, not necessarily, you know, there's all a rise in here as far as what that stuff pays for. But I think they deserve some explanation as to why an increase in regards to what they're paying for. So, you know, if it's attached to CPI, if it's attached to inflation rate, I mean, something that justifies the increase other than saying this is what we do for it. So if there's something like, we have automatic employee increases, for example, of what, 5% a year, something like that. And it seems to be rather automatic.
It was 3% this last year, but
Yeah, whatever. There's some increase. I'm throwing those numbers up. There's automatic stuff happening here that I think deserves explanation or articulating the justification of those increases. And as a payer of those services, that's what it's like with sub, they want to increase their electric rates or the water rates. Well, I would want to go to the council session or the sub board meeting and listen to their discussion as to how they are articulating that increase. The MWMC has extensive public meetings in regards to anticipating or recommendation of a rate increase. And they still have to go to the sub councils to get those rate increases. So there's a lot of oversight, a lot of opportunity for why. And I just didn't see that here at all.
And I understand your perspective, Joe, to be that we have this 4% increase that's by rule, but where is that opportunity for the board to reflect upon that and say, we agree?
Right,
Or otherwise?
Yeah, some sort of discussion or concurrence or objection to, or the ability to, other than it being in a rule saying, yes, this is what we're gonna do, and we're gonna take it anyway. Say what you want, but this is what we're gonna do. And to me, that's opposite of how I would want any agency, any public entity to operate.
I think just building on that, one thing that would maybe be helpful is to understand how the agency's been able to turn over, if you will, permit applications. What's the backlog? What's the typical turnaround time? And there's been any efficiencies? Also, just some discussion about the technical support that staff has provided applicants for permits and helping them understand what the requirements are and things like that, so that once they do submit their permit application, it doesn't require a lot of rework. It's fairly complete. So I think anything that staff can provide and helping us as a board, but also just the community out there that has permits to help them understand, the kind of support that staff has been providing, as well as just not having a huge backlog, because if there's a company needs a permit, they need to get that permit so they can do business or expand or whatever, and so that translates into dollars if there's delays. So I think that might be another beneficial hook as to what people are getting for their dollars.
Yes, glad you mentioned that. Or another thought came flying through my head. Maybe perhaps the people that these rate increases are going to affect, providing, obviously, I would presume you're making notice to them, and which makes sense. And to add a little kicker to that, saying this is gonna be up for discussion with the board on this date, and you are welcome, or it is your thoughts would be welcome and would be heard by the board on those dates. So we have some, at least the opportunity to say, hey, we didn't hear nothing, so we're fine. And I would be totally fine with that. But if we gave them the opportunity and advised them, this is a great opportunity. If you have any questions, comments regarding this increase, this is when we're gonna have a meeting. It's open to the public and you're welcome to speak.
So if I can.
So we already do that.
Yeah, well, to understand the idea here is next year, if we have our fee increases coming, being intentional that there's a board discussion about the upcoming fee increases on the calendar. And then while providing notice to our regulated sources saying this fee increase will be taking place at the end of the year. However, this topic will be discussed at this board meeting at this date and time, FYI, as a future effort for the organization to make.
And their input to allow for consideration of your input. So that opens the door for the board to say, okay, we're not gonna just hear you go bah, bah, bah. We're gonna hear what you have to say, and that will allow us to make an informed decision in regards to, and it may not require a decision, may just have no input, and that means to me, everybody's fine. But
So many of these rules were set in 98, 2001.
I saw.
So making a change like that, I would think would affect the way our rules are written.
yes,
It has to also change the rules,
Yes.
which maybe that's a goal to set for the board for the coming year to evaluate those
Yeah.
rules.
To explore that thought further, in that hypothetical situation, under the current structure that we have, if there were opinion brought before the board saying we have heartburn or distaste, or we would like these fees to be a different rate. Under the current rule framework that we have, those fees would still just automatically be implemented. And what would be required to provide ability for the board to intervene would be a rulemaking period, new rules that would input whatever that may look like in language that could provide opportunity for the board to intervene ahead of a fee
Yeah,
increase.
operating policy 26 years ago is different than 2024.
Yeah.
Right, I just meant we can't just ignore the rules.
Oh, no, I
We need
understand.
to create new
But
rules.
we make rules and we can change them. And that's the way I look at it. I think that's our fiduciary responsibility to do that. And as a board to go ahead and take those challenges and make it happen. And that still sends a message to our current permittees that saying, we take action, we're gonna try to keep things on the up and up and increase, like you're saying, Travis, that to be very open and very, very respondent to folks that are really who we affect. Just my thoughts.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if the board, I don't know if the board concurs.
Well, I would like that if there was an interest to essentially open a rulemaking process to implement something like that, I feel that would be a board
Oh,
action
absolutely.
and direction to provide.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it might, if there's interest, we might want to have a discussion about that in the future.
Almost a working session.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's anyway, it's rulemaking is not necessarily an easy thing, and
Oh, I told him, no, it's not,
it's
a challenge.
and then just also just trying to figure out how you set the fees and what the methodology is in determining what fees are going to be, just like I guess the cities have to go through their process too, so it's not easy.
I mean, we look at it as a responsibility to the people that pay them, that's
Right.
all.
Yeah.
I think it's a good discussion to have as a board, whether we want to keep it automatic or if we want to.
Thank
I'm not saying I have an opinion on, I need to do a lot more thinking about which one makes more sense, but I think it's a discussion worth having about which methodology makes more sense for all of our stakeholders.
And I don't know how much granularity you have in your tracking permit fee costs and staff time and all that, and can you come up with a number that should be the permit fee should be increased each year. Do you have the data to be able to support that? Next year, it should be 3.6% rather than the automatic 4%. And I don't, that is I guess a question that if we have that discussion, staff is going to be prepared as to, if there was a desire to look at this annually and for the board to set the fee, do we have the data to be able to support coming up with a number that's valid or not?
There you go.
Yeah, because that can be a lot of work too. So I don't know how you track, your time and all that, since it's labor intensive, not so much materials or anything.
And I look at that too, Howard and Travis and staff, is that if we're looking at these and we discover like, whoa, it's costing us a lot more than these 4%.
Yeah.
Then we can bump it up. I'm not saying it's always to limit.
Right.
As you know, I'm always about keeping costs down.
Yeah.
But I'm also about recovering actual costs, not floofy in the sky costs, but with stuff that we can go, okay, this is what it costs, and we can justify it. This is how much a fee increase should be. And if it's an increase, fine, I'd support that. But if we can't support 4%, then we need to drop it.
Yeah, and I don't know what the history is of 4%, how arbitrary a number was that, or just, it sounds good and let's go for that. So it's just having the financial data to be able to support what the increases, I don't know if they have it or not.
It's been a lot of it's been arbitrary.
Yeah. Well,
I do, Max, in this conversation, is there any thoughts or things that insight you have or things you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this came out of the board's revenue subcommittee that deliberated on the LRAPA's fee situation or funding situation coming out of the Great Recession. in 2008, 2009. And that was one of the things the board recommended was that, our partners, Eugene and Springfield, reduced their dues by 60%. And so there was a plan by the board to restore that. This was part of that plan, was to increase our fees to bring back some of that funding that we lost through the recession. So that's kind of the impetus there. I guess I'd point out that our fee structure changed dramatically in 2008. We essentially went to DEQ's fee structure. Prior to that, we had a structure whereby we charged a large lump sum at renewal. So that created a lot of budgeting challenges, not only for the agency, but for the sources themselves. So every 5 years, they had this unexpected, or they should have expected it, but it was a one-time fee or, irregular fee. So we went away from those renewal fees and we went just to an annual fee. So there's an initial application that we charge once a facility comes in to get a new permit. And then it's just flat annual fees. There's no, fee to renew your permit. So, just looking at this graph, we kind of aligned with DEQ at about 2008, and they, as you can see, do these dramatic step increases, which met with a lot of resistance from all sides. And I think LRAPA has been able to shield our fee payers from those large increases by just having gradual step increases that are not so shocking.
Yeah, we don't want to repeat, but it just recently happened with Title V, so. Because
And I don't want that either. I'm just
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah,
I like it has been slow and steady and it's been relatively harmless, but we still need to be able to answer those questions. I would think we still need to be able to answer those questions in regards to accountability.
And I interpret that as a recognition from the board that we understand that costs rise and there needs to be a need to meet that. However, we want to make sure that the rise that we are doing has connection to reality versus just something that is set. And then potentially an opportunity to adjust or course correct if the just gradual increase that is ongoing is deemed to not be what's appropriate.
Right. And it may be without having to go through a whole rule change hassle, is to put something out or at least look at, has it been right-sided? And if it has been, then maybe just provide some of that information to our ratepayers saying just, so we've been doing this, this is what this is their stabilization, and there's an opportunity to talk to the board if you disagree.
Right.
And it may be something if we have enough pushback from the ratepayers saying this is bull hockey, then the board should say, okay, well, let's take a look at that. Otherwise, save ourselves a bunch of work and take, what I'm saying? That's okay with me. It just needs to have a look, see.
And that provides opportunity for the board to say, in case there's any inquiry, to say, yes, we do talk about this, we do review this, and there is a reserved place for you to come and speak to us directly if you so choose.
That's a good assessment. Yes, that's where I'm at. It seems to make sense.
right. I would be interested in a future meeting for staff to come back to us, just get us an idea of how you track costs in that program.
That makes sense.
And because as Joe says, maybe a 4% annual increase is insufficient. So it'd be good to be able to just answer that question.
Yeah, thanks.
And from that, I guess we can maybe decide how to go forward. Okay.
So then, I guess direction I'm taking from the board, just from this conversation, I feel agreement that moving into next year, being more forward-looking and, for one, reserving a place on the board agenda to talk about the upcoming standard 4% increase that's currently written into rule, as well as clarifying to our sources who are subject to this fee increase that this date and time and place in the future will occur. And if there's a desire or interest to come and speak to the board, please be aware of this opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's being so completely open. That's perfect.
And it might be appropriate that early next year, well in advance of the end of the fiscal year, is to take a look at the fee increase. So if there is a desire to change the rules, that we'll have enough lead time to be able to do that prior to the end of the fiscal year.
Oh, yeah.
I guess I would say, just an estimate on this would be a SIP or state implementation plan change, and those, we have to get EPA likes to know that is coming for them to
Yeah.
review. It'd be pretty straightforward if this is all we're changing, but they would like those SIP plans well in advance, several months before we
Sure.
start gauging on the
Right.
So that estimate, at least 12 months to get that accomplished.
So it would seem then that
Nothing's ever easy.
How are you? But so it would be though, like, in my mind, as I'm understanding this approach here, is if it were to occur where there was opinion before the board of the fee increases are not something that is advantageous to us, and we would like this to be reflected upon, the upcoming fee increase would still occur, but it would provide the board opportunity to say, we want to initiate a rulemaking process to more formally dive into this discussion.
Sounds good. So.
I think it's being proactive, and it should be, in my mind.
Especially since it hasn't been looked at in a long time.
Yeah,
so-
yeah, it does.
So it's appropriate to take a look at it. Anything else on this topic? Good discussion.
Oh, Matt did have to take on.
Okay.
Yeah, he's gone.
Okay, we still have form. All right, let's move into item number 11, the FY 24 enforcement review. Colleen, will you lead on that, please?
Yes, thank you. So this is for information purposes, just to kind of give you an idea of what we do with our penalties. Each year. So monthly, we provide the summary and as well as the details. And that has changed a little bit in this past year, quite a bit. So any feedback on a format that you guys prefer, that we provide the details for the enforcement actions would be really helpful. But for this last fiscal year 24, we issued 19 notice of non-compliance, which basically are like a warning. There's no civil penalty. They can't contest it. It's just putting them on notice. And we've issued 15 notices of violations, and we collected civil penalties in the amount of we assessed civil penalties in the amount of $15,161. However, below, we collected 21,000. So what we assess in 1 year is not necessarily going to be what we collect in that same year. So as we do, a lot of times people do not pay their fines, so we file a lien on their property and they pay years later. So I also did, so, and I did a little bit of a breakdown. Typically, historically, about 50% of the fines that we assess and collect are in the Eugene city limits area. And then next is Lane County and Springfield, and less in Oak Ridge and Cottage Grove. And it seems to be that same. So for the 21,000 is the amount that we've collected for 2024, which we're going to be giving that we have to forward. We're required by law to forward it to the Lane County General Fund. And that 21,000 is a breakdown of 66% of that was Eugene's money, which was collected from Eugene. And then Springfield was 28% and Lane County was 6%, with 0% Cottage Grove and Oak Ridge for that past year. So, and then the 21,000, we had that check to Lane County, and then we issue to them at the end of the fiscal year. And I believe Travis is providing a presentation to the Lane County Board of Commissioners next week.
Yes, I had one of my one-on-ones with David Lovall last week. I said we will be presenting our enforcement or providing that to you, to Lane County. How would you like us to deliver it? And his idea was to come before the Board of Commissioners and do that. So that's what I'm preparing for. And one thing, thanks, Colleen, I'll add as well, from my perspective, and I think that this is a perspective that extends beyond my role here, is LRAPA as a local organization. We're much more interested in having strong working relationships with our sources as well as individuals, with the intent of bringing whoever that may be it a business or an individual, into compliance or meeting compliance. as opposed to just assessing a civil penalty. And I think that that's the more environmentally protective approach, as opposed to just, you made a mistake, here's a penalty, here's another penalty. And so that's an ongoing effort of working with whoever the source may be of the violation, to avoid taking the civil penalty action, because compliance is just the real goal.
That's the appropriate philosophy, I think. So, yes.
Question, Colleen, the numbers for fiscal year 24-19 non-compliance, 15 violation, 15,161, is that? Not asking for exact numbers, is that roughly similar to previous years? Is it trending one way or another?
It was less for fiscal year 2024.
Okay.
But, not totally unexpected. We had some staff changes and some retirements and, so other priorities that have maybe less attention in that area. Also, it could be just trends of people are in compliance,
Right.
which is a good thing.
Right.
We did
Your
have, we have 2 inspectors, field officers who service all of Lane County. So those are the entities or the staff here who initiate the notices of non-compliance. They're the ones who are responding to a complaint on a source because of an odor complaint saying, hey, what happened? Oh, we noticed perhaps this is an issue. Perhaps we need to look into this further. And yes, there is a permit violation. So now we need to initiate enforcement action, or going out into rural Lane County and seeing someone do an outdoor burn and burning prohibited materials. And so they're the initiation of these efforts. For about the last 4 months, we were down to just a single field officer, compliance officer. Mandy, who I introduced to the board at our last board meeting, is on staff, and she's hitting the ground running, but is now back up to our 2 enforcement field officers.
Colleen, would it be fair to say that most of the warnings and assessed penalties are from individuals or companies that do not have an existing permit with the agency? Is that fair to say that?
Yes, that's very.
So it's mainly like open burning or not having a demolition permit for asbestos, things like that?
Absolutely, yeah,
Yeah.
asbestos, those fines are a lot larger, so some of that money is mostly focused from
Yeah.
the asbestos.
So you don't see a lot of have an issue fines to current permit holders. Usually you're able to work out the compliance issue before getting to that point.
Yeah, that's always our goal, is
Yeah.
to try to help our industry sources stay in compliance before we get to that point.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But by that same token, when a company goes out of business, they may, as they're looking towards that happening, they may not pay their renewal fee or annual renewal fee, because they know what they plan to do in the next year. And so I think we had one of those this year that didn't pay their renewal fee and then subsequently ended up going out of business. So we're having to do a lien for their final fees.
Yeah.
So that does happen as well, that kind of thing.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you for the report. Moving on, the barometrics update, Lance.
Sure, yeah, we just wanted to give hopefully kind of one final major update on where we're at with our metrics. The board voted to sell our metrics last December and kind of liquidate the assets they had. And we were able to find a buyer and make an agreement with them, and they took over, purchased some of the inventory or all of the inventory that they wanted, and took over the warranty responsibilities for the samplers. And discussions with them, it sounds like it wasn't a big hit for them. It's been beneficial. They've taken care of warranty issues, but also had some sales come from that. We just recently provided 30-day notice at the location where Airmetrics was. We were kind of holding on to it, thinking we might need to use it for storage and maybe some office space for the remodel, but we don't need to do that anymore. So that's keys have been turned over to the landlord for that, and that's been taken care of. We're just kind of waiting for that term to conclude. And then the only financial loss incurred was I think it's $1,690 just from uncollected invoices. We did work with ARA samplers who purchased our metrics so that they knew which customers owed us money and they wouldn't sell them anything until they paid us. And so that, most of them paid, they just took a long time to do it. A lot of international companies, and you bill them and then you get, it's like net, 6 months instead of net 30. And so, so that was a pretty minimal hit to Aerometrics into closing an enterprise fund. So yeah, it's a little bit bittersweet. I was thinking today that in 1991, I was like 27-year-old married person with 2 kids and decided, I probably should go back to school. And so I moved down here to Eugene, started school, and looking through the work study board, and Aerometrics popped up. And so I went to work for Aerometrics, that was many years ago. And so I wouldn't be working here at LRAPA today if I hadn't started there. So, but it was definitely time to close it down. But it does have a kind of a sweet spot in my heart for providing me this 30+ years of employment. So it's cool.
So other than the question of when you move the money over, I guess that's.
Yeah, that'll
Last
still be on the agenda in the future, because that's the big one,
Yeah.
$1 million plus that's floating around out there.
And to that end, I'm remembering that I forgot to ask for a motion during the finance committee, or the finance review. So, when we were talking to Key Bank about closing the Aerometrics bank account, it was discovered that the only person on record that is a authorized officer for LRAPA is Susanna, and she's obviously no longer with us anymore. So, well, she's with the world, but not with us. So we need to have a motion to remove her as the authorized officer and to appoint Travis as the primary authorized officer and myself as the secondary authorized officer. I have some verbiage here for a suggested motion. If somebody would be willing. Thank you.
Go ahead and do it. All right, I move that LRAPA removes Susanna Sabragia, I'm pretty good, as the authorized officer at Key Bank, and appoint Travis Knudsen as the primary authorized officer and Christina Ward as the secondary authorized officer as of today, July 11th, 2024. Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That's unanimously. You don't need a roll call, I guess, do you? Okay. 1, 2, 3,
So
4,
that'll
5.
be reflected in the minutes, and then I'll provide the minutes to the bank, and the bank will appoint us in their system. So, yeah, and then we can finally close that account.
And a small tidbit I will add is, from my space here, I witnessed multiple challenges from Merlin's retirement into Steve, and then Steve to Susanna, now Susanna, myself, because we didn't have full duplication of the keys to the castle, so to speak, that it complicates a lot of this work. So my effort and intention moving forward is to make sure that there is adequate duplication of these items, so that way they are not quite so overburdensome in case additional transition is ever needed, or eventually in the future, because it will happen. So just providing that as well.
Thank you. Sorry to interject on that whole.
Good catch.
What do we got next?
It's okay. We'll move on to a big one here. You can see that's the building remodel. So Lance, you're up again.
All right, I'll just give you a summary here of the staff report. But so at the last board meeting, we talked about, we had met with the contractors when they had a mandatory on-site meeting, and we had a good turnout there. That following week, bids were due, and we received 6 bids from 6 separate contractors. And then, they all have a couple hours. Once they see, we open those bids in public, so they get to see what the high and low. The high was 1.4, the low was 1.1 million. So then the 3 lowest bidders finished their paperwork, and they were the only 3 that qualified to be considered for being the contractor. So we looked at those 3 bids, crossed all our T's and dotted our I's according to what Blake Thorpe suggested we do. But basically, once we decided that the lowest bidder was capable of doing the project and there wasn't any red flags, then they were the low bid. And so our intent was, we did put out a week ago, the intent to award bid to Proper Built Incorporation. That still takes an approval of the board and everything, but that way we had nobody speak up and say they didn't think that was right. And so as of yesterday, I think that opportunity for them to make a claim that there's something not kosher in the way we did things is expired. So if something the board was to approve things, we can move forward with contracting with Proper Built. I know Travis had initial discussions with them just to let them know what's going on. We reached out and got each contractor that submitted all the proper paperwork, submitted examples of projects that they had done. And so we reached out to the projects, holders of those projects that Proper Built sent in their recommendations for, and got really outstanding references. It was the city of Eugene, Lane County, and then Oregon Imaging. They helped them put in 3 or 4 new MRI machines. The city of Eugene was Peterson Barn Construction. Lane County was some stuff to do with the fairgrounds, I think. But and they were the low bid, and they were probably the smallest contractor of the 6 that bidded. But the owner has a long-term experience. He's worked for some of the larger companies that bid on this project too, and he's just last few years started his own project. They're local. They're here in Springfield. Yeah. Work, and they of course have subcontractors, but all the subcontractors are at least within the area, if I remember right. And so I don't know if there's any other questions or
I'll mention just briefly though that is Joe still online? The architect is, if there are any potential questions that would benefit from his engagement, he is online too, just making mention.
So could you just provide kind of a timeline, assuming that the board authorizes the issuance of the contract? What happens next, and when things will get started, and completion date and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think for Travis's conversation, we reached out with Brad from Proper Built, and they couldn't get real fine tooth schedule to us because they still need to reach out to subcontractors, and they can't really do a lot of that until it's finally approved. But the initial thought was, sometime in the 1st or 2nd week of August, if things went well, we could start, assuming things were approved today. That still need to come up with a contract, and there are other things that have to happen before they start knocking walls down. But that was kind of their initial thought, was probably sometime by the middle of August we'd be able to start swinging hammers and pounding nails or taking nails out.
And so when is staff going to relocate to Lane County?
Well, what the intent is after assuming or presuming the board is agreeable to this resolution and moving forward with the project, then that becomes more direct conversation with Lane County to shore up our offer that they have for us to utilize the public service building. And then it becomes a main focus of my attention to make sure that we are well prepared and are assuring that we're still meeting and providing the service to Lane County, while also taking what will probably be a week or 2 of effort to really move us into that new space, and then establishing that as our operating ground. What I like about that place with Lane County Public Service Building is it's large enough that we can essentially lift and move and drop again all of the workstations, enough room for all staff to be there. We have a relationship with the city of Eugene to arrange parking, so that way we can take care of parking needs for staff. Getting mailboxes in range, we have a plan of how we're going to be able to receive mail, but also FedEx mail that's not UPS or USPS, as well as UPS, to make sure that those services are still being provided. But it is a little bit of a holding pattern until the green light goes. And then once the green light's there, then it's about races.
We kind of have planned on having our parking permits active as early as August 5th, so that we can start making some of those moving in things happen around that time. So August 5th will be the earliest I think we move into the Lane County space.
I didn't mention the budget part of things here, and it was a low bid, and it was within what we budgeted. So we, it's not, there's some cushion there, but you know, as everybody knows, it probably will get used up as you're going through as Joe knows, you get used as you're going through the project, but we were, you know, we opened the first bid or whatever, it was 1.4 million, we're just like, oh no, you know, but, so we were grateful to have.
So it's 1.1 million.
Yeah, 1.1, and I think we budgeted 1.3, yeah, so.
Brian's got his hand.
Brian?
Hey Lance, can you characterize the contract? Is it a firm fixed price contract that you anticipate or something else?
Yeah, it is a fixed cover the whole cost, you know, assuming, you know, there's can be change orders, but that's the
+10.
no, it's just a fixed cost. So, but you know, there's always negotiations in there. There might be some room for some adjustments. We don't need to.
I'll add to Brian, if I may, that one of the things I really appreciate about Fort Purdy's involvement in this project is some of the templated contract agreements that we have provide a lot more significantly, as it's described to me, more opportunity for LRAPA to be involved in those discussions for any of those change orders. As we're without some of that language included, some of those decisions could be made outside of our loop. And so we will have a lot more hands on the wheel, so to speak, throughout this project.
Did you guys happen to, or would it be applicable to have a reward for finish early or fine for finish late? I know that's been.
I think in the contract there is the fine for finish late, and I can't remember reading.
Because that can be quantified if you're paying for other places to be at and they finish early. You can move out of those places early, save money, and share some of that with the contractor, and everybody wins.
Right.
And then provide for fines for late equal to how much it's costing us to stay somewhere else after the first.
They would have to provide a project deadline to make that.
Correct. Yep. I don't know if that's there, but.
I think it was in the bid plan, but then we haven't signed on the dotted line yet, so we need to make sure that it's included in there.
Yeah,
no.
Travis, do you anticipate the board being involved in any change orders approvals, or is there a threshold you want to set, or how you want to work that?
In my mind, the board has set a budget of what is the 1.3, and if there is any thing that was to go above what the board would be approving here, then that would be a conversation that would require the board's involvement.
Thanks, Travis. Yep.
I agree.
So what we've budgeted is 1.19 for the direct capital building improvements, and then 100,000 for the furnishings. So we're kind of combining that to be the 1.3. That's 10,000 short of 1.3, but
But that includes the contingency though, right?
we
Yeah.
that doesn't include the contingency. That's without the contingency. So we have to also imagine or plan for, there's going to be some more GMA architect type of involvement as well, billing wise, I think. And so even though this did come in at 1.1 million, there's really not much wiggle room. So
I think the question was really about, it's a firm fixed price for the construction, and whether the board would get involved in any approval of the construction contractor going over that, because the other money is for different stuff.
Right.
So is that kind of
I was gonna ask for clarification around the what is still owed to GMA, because I think that last July, I think it was 160 total to GMA. I know this is before your time. I think we approved 35% of that at the time, which was about 56. So that would be, I think what you just said, Christina, there's about another 100 or 105
So
that's
I'm
still due
wondering
to
if,
GMA.
I'm wondering if the person online from the architect might have some insight into that.
what is their services during construction costs?
Yeah, Joe, we're promoting you to panelist here. If you want to accept, unmute, and then share out.
Hi. Oh,
You're a little quiet.
I think you might have your head up.
Your mic down.
Your microphone.
oh yeah, your microphone is up on your head instead of down by your mouth or something.
If that's what it is.
I don't think he has it.
Does this help? Is this any better?
Yes,
There you go.
yes.
All right, great. So in regard to fees specifically, in our original proposal, we had included our services through construction, so a full service project where we help administer the contract. We're playing a role in regular meetings, submittal reviews, pay applications, changes to the work, et cetera. And typically that's about 25% of that total budget. And so through construction documents, which we've completed, and through the bidding process, we would have used that other 75% of the budget. But as is, we wouldn't anticipate increasing that budget unless we change the scope of work significantly. So if we decided to add on to the building or something, I mean, obviously not being considered, but something that is clearly additional to our services, then we would request a change there. But otherwise, we would just stay within the original agreement, which was a not to exceed amount and includes our consultant team. So those engineers that are responsible for the MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing design specifically.
I'm sure you don't have it in front of you, but do you know off the top of your head what remains to be billed?
I can get you that number. Let me, I'll multi-function here, but
Does your
just-
services during construction also include construction inspection? Who's going to be responsible for that?
so inspection is a word that we would generally say, no, we don't do inspections. That's something another agency would do if required. But I don't know that the work requires special inspections. We review the work for general conformance with the contract documents. So weekly, we would attend regular meetings and observe work to date and be able to confirm that it does or does not conform to the construction documents. The city, through the building permit process, will conduct their own inspections as well, which the contractor will schedule and be responsible for. But as regards to building permits and the trade permits, those require inspections at various times during the course of the work. Those would be included in the city's services. And those building permits have been applied for.
But your GMA is the owner's representative, correct? In all this? As far as interactions with the city and permits and all that?
In those two regards, yes. When the contractor needs access to the building, for example, that would be a request they make to the owner. So we're not acting as a true owner's rep where we manage all of that. We help administer the contract. And that's, so there's like some nuance there, but we would still count on the owner having a representative and being a party to the owner, architect, contractor conversation and work through the construction phase.
Is that going to be Lance?
I mean, it's us.
Yeah. Make sure they can get in and out and answer simple questions.
Being a night guard.
Yeah.
So fees remaining, I believe, 34,306.89.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, that was a quick look up and report out, I appreciate it.
You bet.
So who's going to sign off that the walls look, the sheetrock looks acceptable and, doesn't look like crap? I mean, who's going to do that? Is that you or?
Well, I think the architects, like you mentioned, they'll make sure that fit and finish is the way it's supposed to be and the way they think it should be. And then he was just, whether the plumbing meets code, that's somebody else.
Well, there's a quantitative piece and you put all the sheetrock in, but the qualitative piece, I mean, I'm just trying to understand who's going to sign off on the work. Is it GMA or is it you or is it combined the architect and the owner, LRAPA?
My perspective would be I would lean on GMA to make sure it's done the way it's designed, and then I'd pass the buck to Travis to officially sign off on, it's the way I think it should look also.
Final walkthrough where you make sure all the
Right.
paint is in the right spots.
Right, that's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
Marks and So I think probably we would do maybe a team of not just Travis, but a team of us going through and looking at everything and see if we can find anything that needs shored up before we officially accept the.
And I'll say that in my conversation I had with Brian with Proper Built, his perspective is this is very much a relationship angle and a relationship between us and the contract. And conversation was, we are really interested in being in close hand with one another and good communication on all of the projects from start, middle to finish.
Well, I wasn't trying, it was gonna be confrontational. I'm just kind of understanding who's responsible for what. And just making sure that everything's done to, you know, the owner's acceptance, you know, that's the thing. I mean, remodel jobs can get kind of dicey sometimes. So,
Yeah.
Lots of unknowns.
all right. Yes.
So if I could, Howard, just make sure I have kind of the numbers right here. Proper build is 1,099,000. I think you said we have, is it 100,000 that we have in the budget for furniture and fixtures?
Yeah.
And then we owe 34,306, and thank you, Joe, for getting that to us, to GMA. So that gets to 1,233,306, which is about $57,000 in wiggle room. Is that correct?
Which is not much, yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
okay, thanks. I
That
just
that
wanted
was
to make,
my point. Thank you for putting it in numbers, but yeah.
okay, yeah, I want to make sure.
It's usually 10 to 15%.
Yeah,
Just saying.
it says 17% in the.
Oh, 17, there we go.
Well, unfortunately, though, it's a firm fixed price unless there's some change condition that could potentially trigger a request for scope change, you know, that should be a pretty good number. I can't imagine them running into much. I mean, it's a modern job.
55,000.
It's not like, you know, you
Yeah.
gotta remediate underground storage tanks or something that you
Yeah,
didn't know about, so.
Right, well, that's kind of what my point was. If they get in and see that something of the plumbing is not up to current code, then they've got to stop and remediate that. I don't know how much of that is covered in the firm fixed price if it's something newly discovered.
Yeah.
You know, and I know that's where you run into a lot of problems with remodels, that kind of thing.
It is, the firm fix does not apply to the furnitures and fixtures piece of it, though, is that right?
We're doing
That's
that.
kind of on us.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one area where we'll just have to be careful.
Right. And we've made a commitment to kind of wait until we can make sure we're not gonna go over on the construction budget before we really start investing in what we're gonna do for the furnishing.
You could always do cinder blocks and plywood.
Dormer.
Yeah.
100,000 pound lot of desk.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah.
Right.
Office furniture.
We could have the board assemble them on a
That's fine.
Saturday.
Depends where you go.
We're taking a trailer up to IKEA, so.
All right.
All right, any other questions for Joe with GMA or staff? Okay. Thanks very much. I don't think we need you anymore. Thank you for now.
Thanks, Joe.
You're
Yeah, till next-
welcome. Yeah,
tomorrow.
thank you.
Until tomorrow, you know.
Right.
Okay, so I guess we have an action item, which is to approve the resolution to the preferred contractor for the office remodel job. Alex, if you want to introduce that, or are we ready to? There is a draft resolution 24-05 in your board packet.
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution 24-05.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second? Is there further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call to a vote. Do we need a roll call or just?
I think we should probably do a roll call on this one, yeah.
Okay, let's do a roll call vote if you would. Heather.
Yes, Chair Saxon,
Aye.
Director Cutchin,
Aye.
Director Hensley,
Aye.
Director Johnston,
Aye.
Director Pictionary.
Yes,
Okay.
Okay,
but get the nays and they're not present.
Um,
Make sure, well, I mean, I'm just making sure you have that in that.
yes, I do. I have Lovell, Black, heating and plumber all excused.
okay. So the motion approves, we have a quorum and all those that were in attendance voted aye. So resolution's approved, so off to the races.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I do think the remodel will be a real challenging few months to navigate the move. It'll be a good growth opportunity for all of us involved. And I think on the other end of it, it'll be a good new chapter for the organization.
Long overdue, that's for
It
sure.
takes a few months, congratulations.
Yeah. And
that's just a
move. Yeah.
And this will be the last time the board meets in
Yeah.
this space as we know it. So it's gonna be, it's gonna be fun to see the new space. And I'm sure we'll be ready to move in a new space too, so. And I got,
I'm gonna leave it to you.
okay, we're gonna be pretty close. I would just make a request that at each board meeting that the staff provides us I'd like to get a pretty complete update on what the construction is looking like. And if there are any unanticipated issues that may trigger a change in the firm fixed price, we'd like to definitely get a heads up about that.
No surprises.
Yeah, no surprises. I know you don't want any surprises, and we don't either, especially after our discussion about going over budget this year or this past year. So anyway, I'd appreciate that. Okay, well, thank you all, and thank you, staff. I know this has been quite an effort, a lot of work to come up with concepts and getting up to speed on how to bid and make sure we're in compliance with all the rules and things. So it's not easy. It's not like a homeowner just going out and asking for bids to remodel a kitchen. So appreciate all the work. Director's report.
Yes, before I get into the direct report, I was thinking about it for the September meeting. Is there a preference for that to occur specifically virtually, or would it be preferred to try to find an in-person space, be that Lane County Public Service Building or City of Springfield, to have the board meeting?
I think it makes sense to do virtual in this particular case. You know, I prefer personal. That's my, seems like that would be logical to me. So that's my preference.
Other anybody else? Line?
I don't have a preference, but I think virtual makes the most sense.
Okay. I'll take that, and then we can always do the next month adjust on that.
Okay. Yeah, so let's just, we're not meeting, of course, in August. So,
Bummer.
yep. Okay, well, if you'd like, we can meet.
I may just show up.
Bring a hammer.
Yeah, bring
Yeah.
Bring a hammer.
You bring the ice chest. With our favorite beverages, but anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so
I don't
to
buy
be
kombucha.
prompt here, so we can conclude before Joe needs to take off. I do want to start by formally recognizing that the Director of Finance and Human Resources, Susanna Spraja, submitted her resignation, which I accepted. That was effective last Friday. We are looking at that FTE as there are need for effort and assistance in the organization. We'll be probably posting a not similar position to the Director of Finance, but restructuring that, and I'll have updates to the board on what that looks like moving forward. From an air quality perspective for the Director's report, green across the board, although in the last, this is July as opposed to June, we did have some ozone challenges due to the heat and the air quality related to that. But beyond that, for June, things were productive for us. On the complaints that we received, seeing some smoke complaints primarily driven by outdoor burning, which is typical. And you can see in the calendar there how that compares to prior years. This is the enforcement report on the next page, which Colleen described. And it's something that has changed over the last 12 months with moving from Steve to Zanas to myself. But this is more information, and if it could be formatted in a different way that makes it easier, very open to those items and that feedback. Asbestos work continues to be ongoing. We have now up to 245 asbestos projects that have taken place for the year. On the permitting side of items, we have low backlog, which I think is commending to the permit writers and our operations department for keeping our backlog at 6%, or excuse me, 8% for Title V, and then right around 9%. And spent a lot of times talking about the goals here at the end, and there's just some descriptions of progress that's been made over the last month on each of those goals. And then on the tentative upcoming board agenda items, which you will see reflected in the next board report or director's report, will be ahead of next annual fee increase, a meeting with the board to talk about the upcoming rule fee increases for opportunity for the board to solicit feedback from any who choose to attend.
Impressed.
That's pretty awesome. That's good.
Well,
Any questions?
Bless you, my son.
No questions, but I do have a comment. I wanted to thank you guys greatly for getting the information on the ozone stuff out so quickly and when it hit and how it got into the media, because we had a lot of youth sports and things that were supposed to be scheduled that certain coaches from other areas still wanted to fight through heat.
Yeah.
But this information allowed to help us show more information on why they shouldn't be playing and participating in those things.
Glad you comment. I had thought that, I just didn't think to comment.
Yeah,
we did
great.
see, because of ozone pollution, reach our air quality on the unhealthy for sensitive groups range, which sensitive groups includes
Yeah.
youth.
Yes.
Meaning that any breathing hard and heavy outdoors is unhealthy. And one of those instances where, from a public education perspective, LRAPA really works to work with our school administrators for them to, not for us to make those decisions for them, but to make sure that they have the information of what the consequences could be from still being active when.
That makes it more difficult in the summer though, when school administrators are sitting on a beach somewhere, right? So
Yes.
we rely on the public information that comes out to get it into the independent sports authorities and stuff. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Give them that ammunition.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Lance, what was the highest 1 hour ozone reading? You know,
1 hour out, I don't know if on it, it's the standard's based on an 8 hour average.
Oh, 8 hour.
It's 70 and we hit 74.
Oh, wow.
So it's the first time in a while. we've
Approaching
been-
it.
It takes 4 of those to be out of compliance, but
Totally random. I know it's one I need.
No.
Totally random. I'm a random kind of guy. My brain, you have no idea what it looks like.
I'm not entering that space.
The fireworks use and whatnot, has there been any detectable variance in regards to readings in the air during that season? And do you have regional, if there is detectable differences, do you have that regionally available? And I'm just curious, I mean,
We
the
call
answer would
that,
be yes.
internally, we call that the Patriotic Award. And
Who got it?
West Eugene got it this year, and
Because we don't have a sensory.
We went out thirsting.
I know.
Well, they had the rodeo out there. I know from where our house is situated, they were launching lots of rockets.
Just our hill was launching enough.
Yeah. So there is, it is.
it's particulate matter that we sense or that we're able to monitor for. And we do see a spike on our monitoring every season because of 4th of
So
July
can I safely
celebrations.
say that there was not a detected spike in the Springfield area?
at an official monitor, yeah.
I'm just saying.
I did look at the little purple air monitors that are around and,
Oh, yeah.
and you won looking at purple airs, yeah.
We won purple air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my purple air was definitely.
Yeah.
But the official monitors that we could report data for, yeah, it was West
Only because we
Eugene.
don't have
Yeah.
one out there.
We were undetected.
There's a
Yeah,
lot of patriotic activity. Thirsty.
That's some really high spikes out there. I mean, it's, and
I didn't like
within
it.
an hour, but
You can't.
Those aren't GPA spaced.
no.
Okay, good. All right.
No.
You have room at your house where we could put an official monitor out there?
Yeah. There's lots of room. Plenty of room. I don't even know where the bedroom's gonna be.
Or is current.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, is anything else? Well, thank everyone for attending today. We'll stand adjourned.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're out here before.
Enjoy the summer.
No, thank you, Brian.
You did awesome, Travis.
Thank you, Joe.
Everybody